So now that we've laid down this foundation, let's explore in further depth and really examine just how these basic assumptions really affect us and our lives. And the first point I want to stress here is it's not the thing, but the place it's coming from. Okay, it's not the thing, but the place it's coming from. When I say get to the cause and change your baseline, change your defaults, change your foundation, and step into an entirely new way of being, into a completely new experience of the world, what you have to realize is that you could be doing the exact same things you were doing prior to having changed your baseline. However, you will now be experiencing those things differently because it's now coming from a different place. Okay, it's not about the things, it's about the place it's coming from. And the big difference here is that when you're assuming scarcity as your default, when your baseline is 3 out of 10, for example, everything is coming from a place of desperation. And when you're assuming abundance as your default, when you have that 10 out of 10 baseline, everything is coming from a place of inspiration. Desperation, inspiration. That's the big difference here. Desperation is that perpetual run that we're all used to, where we're running away from something and running towards something else. It's a thirst, a craving, a need, a desire, and it's what we're used to. We're all assuming scarcity and trying to escape it. We're running away from ourselves and running towards salvation. Okay, and this is what literally drives us. It's what fuels everything from our thoughts to our emotions to our actions, ultimately to our lives. We're all living a life on the run, a life of escapism, and we've been doing it for so long that we've convinced ourselves that this here, desperation, is the only way to go about things. We think that without something to run away from, and without something to run towards, without the carrot and the stick approach, without the punishment and reward approach that we're conditioned to, we wouldn't do anything. We would stop expanding, we would stop evolving, we would stop innovating, and we would just stagnate and die. We would stop existing. It's like if there was nothing to run away from and nothing to run towards, why would I innovate? That's where all the great human accomplishments come from running away from, running towards. They've come from desperation. They've come from necessity. And it's gotten to a point where we're so bought into this that people purposely make themselves feel worse. They beat themselves up to feel more motivated, to be more driven. Okay? And what you have to start asking yourself here is, what if there was another way of going about things? What if there was something else other than desperation, this perpetual run? And I like using the example working for money to illustrate this, where we all think that money is what drives us to work. It's like, well, I must survive in this world. I'm working to make money to survive. If there wasn't the carrot, money, I wouldn't work. If I had all the money in the world, I wouldn't do anything. That's the assumption. But is that true? If right now you had all the money in the world, would you just stagnate and do nothing? And the answer is no. You might stop for a little bit and do nothing for a little bit because you've been on the run for so long that you're exhausted. But after a while, you would be inspired to do something, but it would be coming from a different place. It would be coming from inspiration. You don't have to force yourself to do it. You'd be inspired. Okay, and this is something that I personally realized with Success with Women, where I would teach clients, hey, you have to stop needing, craving the girl. Okay, you got to stop this desperate approach to things. And something that I would hear all the time as a comeback to this is, well, if I didn't need the girl, why would I go talk to her? But is that true? And the answer is no. Okay, what I found is that when you let go of this neediness, this craving, this thirst, you'll find yourself naturally inspired to go interact with women. You don't need to force yourself to. You don't need to desire it. You don't need to need it. Okay? And this is the difference. It's inspired action or desperate action. And this is what I mean when I say it's not the thing, but the place it's coming from. Are you taking action, the thing, coming from desperation or inspiration? Are you living, coming from desperation or inspiration? This is what I mean when I say step into an entirely new way of being. Step out of desperation and step into inspiration, where you're not acting because you're running away from something and trying to reach or attain something else. You already feel amazing and you're just acting because. Just because. That's inspiration. It just happens because. It just kicks in. Okay? And what you'll notice, and this is the big difference, is that when you're acting out of inspiration, things suddenly become effortless and authentic, okay? Because you're no longer fighting against something. It's no longer you versus something, versus the thing you're running away from, okay, which is what happens with desperation. It's you versus scarcity. And this here is extremely draining. It's heavy, it's tense, it's forced, it's a struggle, and you're met with a lot of resistance when you stop fighting against something. There's no longer that resistance, and things become light. There's no longer something to overcome. You start moving with the current of things, and it's light, it's calm, it's easygoing, it's present, and it's energizing. Okay, you're working with yourself instead of against yourself. And a great exercise that I love doing when I'm giving a seminar is to bring someone up on stage and to really illustrate this. You know, we all think, desperation, that's what motivates me. I'm like, hey, come up here on stage, and here's the feeling of desperation. I want you to talk for 30 seconds about anything. Just talk for 30 seconds, and while you're doing this, you're gonna be met with resistance. I want the entire audience to boo you. That's the feeling. It's like you're fighting against being booed. That's what motivates you. Go. And the person does it for 30 seconds and just is aware of how that feels. And it's usually very heavy, very draining. Then I'm like, okay, everyone stop, talk for 30 seconds, same exact exercise, but this time everyone cheer that person on. And what that person notices is you'd think that drive of desperation would be a lot more powerful, but it's the opposite. And those 30 seconds where that person's cheered on are 1,000 times better. That person just lights up, and it feels light, it feels effortless, because you're going with the current of things. My first goal here with you is to get you to experience that feeling of coming from scarcity versus coming from abundance. Okay, so we all know scarcity, and I'll intro this with a story of my first seminar. Okay, so my first seminar was in Los Angeles with Owen, this is years ago, and I remember he calls me the day before, and he's like, listen man, I'm doing this speech tomorrow, I want you to open for me. Just 10 minutes, okay? This is like, I wasn't even working for the company, I was just like, you know, helping out here and there. He's like, just come up on stage the first 10 minutes, prepare something. Now, what am I thinking? First thought, holy fuck, okay. Like, first thought, it's like, holy fuck, no one knows me, they're probably all gonna assume that I'm a piece of shit. Super weird how we assume that. Why wouldn't they assume that I'm awesome? You know, it's like, they're gonna assume I'm a piece of shit, they're gonna be judging me, they're gonna be looking for ways to take me down. Super weird. Like, that's what drove me. I'm like, okay, well, how do I counter that? You know, start catching those little assumptions, by the way. The same as, say you walk up and interact with a girl, she's gonna reject me unless. Whoa, why are you assuming she'd reject you? Why is the default you get rejected? Unless. Why won't she just like you by default? You know, oh, I better become successful in life, unless, or else, you know. It's like, no, whoa, why? Why do you assume the opposite? Why do you assume you have to do anything to earn something? Like, why do you don't deserve it by default? You know, so just start catching those. But that was me. I'm like, fuck, the crowd will hate me unless I impress them and I really just fucking kill it, okay? So I need the best content. And I remember I was like writing, I was thinking about it. I couldn't sleep. I was writing content on pulling. I remember like, okay, let's go on pulling, talk about this. And I show up, scared shitless, super stifled, walk in, it's like a huge crowd, like, I'm like, oh my God, in the back. My buddy's like, are you ready, dude? Ready to fucking do this? Owen shows up, he's like, listen, man, so instead of 10 minutes, it's 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh my God, like that. So I'm like, oh fuck, I don't even have 30 minutes. What am I gonna talk about? This is gonna be horrible. It's gonna be a catastrophe. And he's like, listen man, come on up, I'll introduce you. So I don't even have time to prepare anything else. Throws me up on stage. And the way he introduces me is he really just like, as an extra challenge, like this is, again, how we kind of like fuck with each other, but also push each other, just shoves me the fuck in my head. So instead of just being like, hey, this is Julian, speak, he's like, so, welcome to the fucking seminar, like, speaks so fucking loud, cuts over me, he's like, welcome to the seminar, everyone's cheering, he's like, listen guys, you're gonna hear from fucking Julian and this guy. It's the shit. What you're about to hear is gonna change your fucking life. It's gonna rock your world. What am I thinking? I don't even know what I'm gonna say. Oh my God, there's so many people staring at me. I have no idea. It's like, it's gonna rock it. Just fucking take it away, man. Give him a hand. And then it's like, and then he walks off and I'm just like, hey everyone. It was horrible, okay? And I mean, that feeling there, like getting through that seminar was, it came out actually really good objectively, but from mine, it was so much effort, it was so much hell. It was like me always trying to prove myself. It was everything I was doing was coming from taking. I'm like, please like me, give me the approval. Everyone's out to get me. It was coming from the wrong place, okay? And in a way, this is what drives us to everything that we do in life. This is what we're used to, okay? So what I want you to experience here is the difference between the two. And to fuck around with this, what we're gonna do is everyone stand up, like stand up right now. And I'm gonna have you, kind of similar to me back in the day, give a little 30-second seminar. Before we crack into it, okay, a couple rules. You're gonna give a 30-second seminar on your journey here to this event, okay? It doesn't have to be like, you know, you don't make shit up, just be like, hey, you know, I got in my fucking car, you know, however you got here, 30 seconds, talk about your journey. While you do this, and I want you to really, as you're saying it, notice the sensations in your body. As you do this, this entire crowd is going to boo you. They're going to boo you. They're out to get you. They're going to insult you. They're going to yell at you. They are not on your side. They're judging you. They're shaming you. Okay? Like, I literally want you guys to be like yelling, booing, shaming, insulting, like just any, like if you were in his spot, anything you would not want to hear, that. Okay? And for you, I want you to be delivering it like as if everyone's just, you know, like just kind of just deliver. It's like, hey, you know, this is what's happening, and notice the sensation, okay? It's gonna feel very heavy. It's probably gonna feel very fucking heavy. It's gonna feel like, oh my God, it's gonna be fucked, you know? And then what do we think? Our solution is we need to work on better speaking skills and better motivation and better delivery. No, it's changing the assumption. So we're gonna do once with the booing, and then we're gonna switch and everyone's gonna cheer you on. And I want you to notice the difference. Okay. So 30 seconds, boo this motherfucking down. You have this seminar, go. Pathetic. Yell him down. Like just boo him the fuck down, dude. Good. Now, let's kind of break this down a bit, okay? First of all, how do you feel?
Feel sick.
All right, now a couple of things, okay? It's very interesting, by the way. Like, you really don't know what this feels like until you experience it. Like, it's insane. You're like, you know, a few people yelling at me. Like, when it happens, you're like, holy fuck. It's pretty insane. Now,
a really tight, like, chest feeling.
Yeah.
And like every time I say something, I'll look at somebody and then I hear the boo and it goes like, ugh.
Dude, well, it's so funny because even though you know this is an exercise, like everyone's here, like, hey, we're all on the same team, it's like, it's extremely overwhelming, and you can just sense it. Look at your fucking body language, dude. You're just like, like, oh, hey, everyone.
We're all friends. We're all friends.
We're all friends. All friends. Qualifying. You don't have to qualify yourself. Not everyone's out. They're not judging you. You don't have to prove yourself.
Man, this is a lot of fun.
Why do you assume they're judging you? Why do you have to say anything? Why can't you assume they already like you?
He knows this too well.
Don't react to me now. Look at this chest.
It was a sick drive here. I loved it.
Just relax. You don't have to do anything. They all like you. You don't even have to talk.
You're so excited. I was like, we're going to go
Breathe
all
it
night
in.
long.
Breathe it in. Take your hands in your pocket. Breathe it in. Don't even do the nervous laugh. Breathe it in. It's fine. I'm just fucking with you. Now, this is fucking big. This is big. Now, notice how you feel, okay? Notice, again, the thoughts, notice the way you talk, again, body language. We're going to do it now where everyone cheers you on, okay? And again, this is not a permanent fix. It's just to give you an idea of that feeling and to just kind of be aware of the two. You know, so when you go through life, you can ask yourself, wait a minute, is this coming from that heavy, trying to prove myself, qualify myself, craving, desperation, lack, taking type of place, or not? Is it desperation or inspiration? Okay? And again, we're playing off validation here, but the whole purpose is just for you to experience it. Okay? So we're going to do 30 seconds again. Same story, your journey here. You have the mic. But this time, everyone cheers him on like he's a fucking king. What's your name?
Eyal.
Eyal?
Eyal.
Eyal. You're fucking yelling his name. This guy is God. He's just arrived. You are like, this is like your whole purpose in life. Like, notice how, you're like, like way more open. Like you're getting pumped up.
This is really good.
Yeah, dude. Every like your whole purpose in life, like really play the role, has been to witness his presence. That's what you've lived for. You're here. Glory. 3, 2, 1, cheer him on. Woo! Come on. Hell yeah. Even more, even more. Come on. Hi. Now, did you notice the difference? Body language, expression, the way he's talking, the way he's carrying himself. It's huge. All right? Just this little shift. Now, funny enough, no, it's crazy, dude. It's like, even though it's an exercise, you're like, whoa, what the fuck? You know? Same person coming from a different place. And this is key to understand too, because you always think there's something missing inside of us. Not really. Like, there's nothing missing for him to deliver that awesome speech. Like, yeah, really into it. Look at the shit. Like, thanks everyone. Fucking you're awesome. Like, what the fuck? Like, to say this in front of an audience, like, it's scary, by the way. It's fucking scary as shit. And we tend to think, man, I need some more references to get there. You know, I need more experience, I need more skills. No, you already have all that shit, but something's blocking it. Now, here's what we're gonna do. 30 seconds, just like you did on stage, one guy goes first and talks about his journey here to the event. During that time, the other guy just boos him down and insults him. Then we'll switch. Decide who goes first. 3, 2, 1, go! Go, 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 go! Sensations. Notice how that feels. Like when you were talking, did it require effort? What went through your head, your body? Now let's do some cheering on. Same guy talks, same fucking story. Cheer him on like he's the fucking champ, like you're hearing God speak. 3, 2, 1, go! Cheer him on! Now, notice the difference. A great book that I also recommend checking out that really emphasizes the specific point here is Power versus Force by David Hawkins. And it really goes in depth, okay, in terms of coming from you versus something and it's a lot of effort, it's a struggle versus effortless. Okay, it's force versus power. You know, and we think that effort is good. That's the way we're conditioned. If it's a lot of effort, that means you're working hard, that means it's good. But it's not a virtue, okay? Stop associating effort with a virtue. In reality, the less effort there is, the more powerful it is. Because effort is draining, as I mentioned before. It's a struggle, it's heavy, it takes energy out of you. And we can crack into another example here where if I bring someone up on stage to yell, I love using yelling as an example. If someone comes up on stage to yell, you would think that if that person puts in a lot of effort, a lot of force, if you will, to project that yell, it would be a lot stronger than with no effort at all. But that's not true. Okay, you can try. You putting in that force, like yelling at, projecting out, it requires effort and it's still loud, but if you just let go of fighting against something, you let go of the resistance and you unleash that yell, it'll be a lot more effortless and a lot more powerful and a lot louder. So what I want you to do here is, I don't know, man, just give out a little scream. Just let loose. Whatever you want to do, whatever you want to say. Why not give out a scream? Like, hey. Hey. Now let's go a loud scream. I'll even take this off because otherwise, Gene. A loud scream.
Hey.
Now, is that as loud as you can go?
No, of course not.
Go as loud as you can go. Just for fun.
Hey!
Good? However, what I want you to do is you can go even louder. Like this here, linking to what we talked about before, is kind of like, it's that effort and like forcefulness. Okay, so here's the difference. Effort and forcefulness, it's like it doesn't really connect with anyone. It's always like coming from like that different, it's like you think you're stifled and you're like forcing it. So it'll be more like projecting at the person. Notice the difference between this. Hey! Or hey! 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 Different. One is hey, it's like it's force, it's effort, it's at. The other one's like just loose and it goes way fucking louder. That's the difference between hustling from like desperation, hustling from scarcity, or hustling from inspiration. In reality, it's like you hustle way more coming from abundance. You're way louder coming from abundance when you think everyone's on your side. You're like, hey, how's the fuck's it going? Versus everyone's against me. Hey, how's the fuck is it going? Okay? So I don't want that forcefulness. I want you to, and we'll go back and forth, and let's do this. Every time we'll just top each other a little bit. I'll do, hey, and then you'll go louder. And just think, just loose, just loose. Think fat fucking American, like, hey, like that, all right? So I'll go first, and we'll just keep going louder, okay? Hey!
Hey.
You have to go louder than me every time. Hey!
Hey.
Hey!
Hey.
Hey! With that
Hey.
relaxedness, keep that relaxedness and try to go louder while keeping that relaxedness. You're just letting more out, letting more out. Hey!
Hey.
Hey!
Hey.
Hey!
Hey.
Hey! Hey! Everyone! Hey! 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 Quiet. Bang. Now pause, everyone pause. That last one you did, just as loud, if not a little bit louder, way less forced. Did you feel the difference? And when I say effortless here too, just to make it clear, I don't mean that you're not doing anything. You know, it's easy to think like, oh, well, success should be effortless. That means I shouldn't have to work these long hours to make it. No, okay, that's completely wrong. Remember, it's not the thing, but the place it's coming from. You still have to put in a lot of work and hustle for a lot of things that you want to accomplish in this world. However, what I am saying is that it shouldn't feel like all this effort. You're still doing the same amount of work, but you're experiencing it differently. That person on stage is still talking for 30 seconds, but it's a different experience. That person is still yelling, but it's a different inner experience. I remember when I was younger, I was really into music, and I got this program called Pro Tools on my computer. And it's a program where you can edit music, you record your tracks, you can mix them, and I would spend hours, hours upon hours just studying this program, reading the manual, testing it, like recording something, tweaking it, just so many hours, more than I ever would for, say, a school assignment, yet it felt effortless. And that's the difference. For school, 2 minutes on an assignment, I would just be drained. That felt like, ugh, like that struggle. I'm like, ugh, just going through this assignment. Pro Tools could stay up all night. Way more work, if you objectively look at it, than those 2 minutes on that school assignment, yet those hours felt like minutes. Okay? That is the big difference between effortless. You do a lot more, but it doesn't feel like it. Your experience of the thing is different because it's coming from a different place. And this is ultimately, too, how you get what you're after, that long-lasting motivation. You don't have to use, adrenaline, those spikes of cortisol, the stress to be motivated. You don't have to use misery. You don't have to keep beating yourself up to be motivated. You're inspired, it's effortless, and you just go. Okay? And all that energy, too, where you're like, oh, run away, all that concern is just there. It's that one-way current, if you will. So it's effortless, and it's also coming from a place of authenticity. Okay? Effortless and authentic, where you're no longer basically acting in a reaction to something, in a reaction to your baseline, and instead you're generating. Okay, and this is huge. When you're coming from abundance, from that 10 out of 10 baseline, you're finally free to choose. It's no longer reactive, and it's no longer, I need to. It's no longer compulsive. Okay, you'll finally be acting through your own intentions, and this is big too. Okay, as I just mentioned, if you don't have that solid 10 out of 10 foundation, everything becomes compulsive. Okay, you don't have a choice because you're constantly running away from something that is following you everywhere. It's like you tie one of those like metal cans to your leg and you're running away from the sound, but it just keeps fucking following you everywhere because you're running away from yourself. It's compulsive. It's that perpetual movement away from aversion and towards attachment. It's a life of escapism that ultimately leads to a life of addiction, okay? Because you can't stop. It's endless, it's compulsive, and this is how we live. We're all living a life of escapism and addiction. You can test it now. Whatever you're doing, if you're afraid to stop, or you rationalize that if you stop, you're settling. This is one I hear all the time. I don't want to settle for not being the best, for not reaching my potential. If I'm teaching success with women, guys are like, I don't want to, get in a relationship because then I'm settling. And it's just endless. That's the rationalization you come up with because you're coming from a place of desperation. Okay, another example are, self-help junkies, workaholics. They just can't stop. They are addicted. And in reality, none of us can stop. If you want to do a little experiment here, which I highly recommend everyone does at some point, go try a sensory deprivation tank. Okay, this is a tank that you lie in, and there's liquid in there. It's not water, but it matches the temperature of your body, and you float, so you don't feel anything. They close the tank, you don't see anything, and you don't hear anything. Okay, it takes away all your senses, thus the sensory deprivation tank. And I remember the first time I did this, I did a 2-hour session, and at first it was interesting and cool and fun. I'm like, whoa, what is this? I don't feel anything, I don't see anything, don't hear anything. This is awesome. But after a few minutes, once the novelty wears off, it became a living hell because I'm just stuck there, and suddenly you feel how you're living a life of addiction, how you're just addicted to being on the run. And it's a lot harder to be on the run when you're just lying there not feeling, hearing, or seeing anything. Okay, you can still escape yourself, obviously, with your thoughts, which is why it was really hellish. We think just because I'm alone, I'm disconnected. Not necessarily, but it really kind of puts this in your face, like you are living a life of addiction. I also remember experiencing this on my first world tour. I was traveling and I was really in this must work, must hustle mentality. And I was burning myself out, and my friend was like, hey, take a break and go see a movie. And I remember it was the first Avengers movie when that one came out. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll go see it. And I went to see it, and that movie, I just hated every second of it. And it's not because, the movie was necessarily bad. It was just that I was there, and the entire time I'm like, I could be working right now. I could be working. That addiction. You can ask yourself as well, when's the last time you didn't do anything? It's hard to remember, like, when's the last time I just did nothing? Every time we have some free time, we're quickly obsessing, like, oh my God, how do I fill this free time with activity? We've constructed our lives in a way where we're always on the run. It's fueling this. It's fueling our addictions. You go home, there's the computer, the internet, the music, the television. If you go to meet a friend and say your friend's late, how soon till you reach for your phone? We're always running away from, we're always on the go. It's compulsive, it's endless, okay? And this is something, though, you'll notice when you change your baseline, you move out of desperation into inspiration, that you're no longer living this compulsive life. There are no longer any addictions. This baseline is at the cause. It's the source of all addictions. And this is also why most people just can't stop. We fail to get to the cause when it comes to addictions. If you take compulsive eating as an example, okay, this is a common one, compulsive eating. Right here, let's just say there's the inspiration part of eating, where you're inspired to eat because you're hungry and you have to survive. Then there's the desperation part. This is the addiction where you start eating to run away from something, to escape yourself. If you're bored, you eat. It gives you something to do. When we look at this, we're like, whoa, you know what? Eating too much, it's compulsive, it's an addiction here. Just restrict yourself. But what happens is you restrict some of the desperation, but also some of the inspiration. You restrict a bit of what is authentic. Instead, what we need to do is get to the cause and ask ourselves, whoa, what are we running away from? What is at the cause? What is the source of this compulsiveness? Address that, the desperate part is suddenly gone, and you're left with the inspiration part. And this is how you discover what is authentic. Okay, this is how you discover who you truly are and what you truly want. It's impossible otherwise. Okay, you have to change this foundation, and this is how you find your purpose. For example, you hear this, you need a purpose, you need a purpose. And most of us are just grasping for a purpose out of desperation. We're using it to run away from ourselves. We're like, oh, I feel horrible, but maybe if I get a purpose, I'll finally feel fulfilled. And of course it doesn't work, because it's just an escape. Once you let go of what it is you're running away from, you will see what you're naturally inspired to do. And that is how you find your real, authentic purpose. And when it's coming from authenticity, you will also find that you will be much more motivated and much more engaged, okay? Not just because you're spending less energy and effort with that struggle fighting against something and running away from something and being concerned, but because it's authentic. Because it's fully you, you're unstoppable. You're coming from a place of strength, versus having to compromise or be fake, which is what we're unconsciously doing. If I'm giving a seminar, for example, and I don't need the money at all, okay, you would think that I'd probably slack off. It's like, well, if he doesn't need the money, if there's no outcome, if there's nothing to attain, if there's nothing to achieve, our default is we would be lazy and slack off and not really be driven to go all out. But that's not true. If there is not that desperation, that thing to attain, you don't have to compromise anymore. Every time you're trying to reach something, there's part of you that compromises. And when you're authentic, you can truly be you. It's a lot more powerful, and you push it a lot fucking harder. Okay, the seminars where I just don't care, as bad as that sounds, those are my best seminars. That's when I'm fully me and I fucking bring it. Okay, because there's nothing to take, no longer that concerned, and you're just focused on giving, on sharing, on expanding, and coming from that position of authenticity and strength is what really brings us alive. Okay, and as another side note here too, you'll finally stop self-sabotaging. Okay, you move from desperation to inspiration. There's no longer that unconscious tendency to just kind of shoot yourself in the foot. Because if you're coming from that craving, that need, that thirst, that desire, like you need that outcome, okay, to escape yourself, you've been doing it for some time, and because you've been doing it for some time, you're hooked on it. Okay, as we mentioned before, the more you act within a certain paradigm, reinforcing a certain assumption, the more you invest in it. So there's part of you that's so used to experiencing this thirst, this craving, that you don't want to succeed, because if you succeed, you will no longer experience that scarcity and that lack, so you think, that is driving you to take action in the first place. So you sabotage. You don't want to get it. Part of you does not want to get it because suddenly that feeling is gone. Okay, it's the same as someone who's addicted to being positive. Okay, we get addicted to certain states, different emotions, different thoughts. Okay, a lot of our thoughts are the same, say today, as they were yesterday and the day before. So if someone's always positive, they'll find ways to be positive. Even if there's like negative news, they're going to try to find a way to be positive. If you're hooked on this craving desperation, you're going to find ways to keep that alive. Okay? And you must delete this belief, by the way, that you must crave the win to get it. You know, it's like I must have a strong need and a strong desire. No. Okay? You've been telling yourself a lie with this. Okay? If something comes into your life, it's not because of the result of you really craving it. It's in spite of you craving it. Okay? You don't need a strong desire to make it. You don't need a strong need to make it. But you do need a strong intention. It's not about the desire. It's about the intention. Okay? So this here is really the difference between assuming scarcity and coming from a place of desperation versus assuming abundance and coming from a place of inspiration. And this applies to everything, you know, in terms of what motivates us to say work, find a purpose, but also live. And this is my personal definition of what enlightenment is. It's coming from a place of inspiration. It's experiencing life from that 10 out of 10 baseline, from that 10 out of 10 foundation where you're living authentically, effortlessly, and it's no longer compulsive. You know, it's ultimately a life without any attachments, without any aversions. There's no longer anything you're running away from or running towards. And because of that, because there's nothing you wish to move away from or towards anymore, you can finally live a life of total non-resistance, where you welcome everything. You welcome all experiences, you welcome all thoughts, you welcome all emotions, you welcome all things, because you now have that 10 out of 10 foundation. You're already there. You welcome it all. And because it's now coming from that 10 out of 10 place, you also experience all these things differently. They don't affect you the same way. You don't get attached to them. You don't hang on to them by resisting them. They'll simply run their course and flow through you. Okay? So you'll still, for example, experience negative emotions. However, those negative emotions won't cause you to suffer the way they once did, because you're now experiencing them coming from a different place. Okay? And this is key with enlightenment. You know, we tend to think that enlightenment is this superhuman accomplishment, you know, where you're, once again, 100% positive all the time, 100%, you know, just in the zone all the time. You never are unhappy. It's only positive emotions, etc., etc. However, if that is your view of enlightenment, it's still an escape, because you're resisting, you're running away from not being positive 100% of the time, not being happy 100% of the time. So that view of enlightenment is wrong. Okay? Instead, enlightenment is you're still engaged in life. You still experience the ups and downs of life. You still experience negative emotions. You still experience negative thoughts. However, they affect you differently because you now have this strong foundation. Okay? And this is the same too as a little side note with people who think that once they found their purpose, they will always be in the zone, working, just killing it, always passionate, never frustrated, etc., etc. No. When you find your purpose, there's still times where you're blocked. There's still times where you are frustrated. There's times where you don't want to. However, your worst day working on something that's authentically your purpose tops your best day working on something that is not your purpose. And it's the same thing with life. Okay, you still experience the ups and downs of life, but it's a different experience. And coming from inspiration, experiencing one of the downs of life, when you have that solid foundation, will top experiencing the highs of life coming from desperation. Okay, suffering is really that constant run. It's that constant compulsive escape. And to help illustrate this, I like to think of it as a video game. If you're playing a video game where, there's the character in the game you're playing. If you're in scarcity and you're coming from desperation, your experience of life is you in the video game. It's the character. It's the first person perspective where, you're running around and there's all these things happening and you're very attached to things going a certain way and resisting other things that you don't want to happen. It's like that's your experience of life. Once you change your baseline from scarcity to abundance, you shift from that first person perspective of being the character in the video game to being the person playing. Okay, it's now third person perspective, and your experience of that video game will be completely different. There will still be the ups and downs of the video game, the scary parts, the non-scary parts. You're still engaged in it, but it doesn't affect you the same way. Now you're in non-resistance. You embrace the entire experience and you don't get lost in it. You don't get lost in your thoughts, your emotions, different things, everything, okay? And this here is ultimately what also allows you to enjoy the journey that is life, to enjoy the process, because you're no longer in a hurry, running towards salvation, running towards that destination, always focused on the future, running away from the past, never present. Now you can finally be present. Because once you're 10 out of 10, there's nowhere to go. It's all the same. It's all abundance. You can finally appreciate life and not be so worried about what's going to happen. Okay, appreciation, not expectation. You stop running the rat race, trying to get to the cheese, and instead you start enjoying the race itself. Okay, remember, when you're 10 out of 10, when that's your baseline, that's what colors your entire experience of the world. So it doesn't matter if you're in the beginning, if you're in the middle, if you're at the end, it's still more and more abundance. Okay, it's the same as us trying to escape desperation. Doesn't matter what you do, it's still desperation. Come from abundance, enjoy the journey, enjoy the process. And this is something that a lot of people experience with creative endeavors. For example, me with music. When I was younger, if I'm composing a song and I'm just really present to the process of composing, of coming up with something, of letting inspiration kick in, I'm not rushing to finish the song. I won't be happier once the song is done because it's just more of me expressing who I am through the music. You don't need the song to be finished to be happy, and it's the same with life, okay? You'll still expand, you'll still grow, you'll still innovate, you'll still engage in life, but it's inspiration and curiosity, let's just say, that'll drive you instead of desperation and misery, okay? This is the big difference on how these assumptions, 3 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 affect us and our lives.